Na, aš manau, mes šitoj prezentacijoj pamatėm, koks yra potencialas šitos vietos. Ir gerbiam mūsų Ciliai, galim tik tai labai padėkoti ir už tą darbą, kuris jau 40 vyksta ir matome, kad nuo to pirmųjų laimėto konkurso 89 metų, reiškia, rezultatų, nueita labai daug į priekį, įsigilinta ir į situaciją, ir į mūsų miestą, ir į mūsų klimatą, į viską, kas reikalinga. Dabar truputėlį nušviesiu tą foną urbanistinį, kuriame tai vyko ir kaip tai įsirašo į mūsų tuos planus, kuriuos irgi nuo tų laikų pradėjom rengti. Nes senamiesčio regioninio projektą pradėjom rengti irgi perestroikos pradžioj 88 metais. Dabar beros vakar profesorius Landsbergis klausė...
Professor Landsbergis yesterday asked how did it happen that the synagogue was demolished. It happened quite simply. It remained in a rather good condition after the war, and with the Red Army coming into the city, it was still quite a lot of it standing. I was a child and I visited the ruins, and I remember that. And then it started deteriorating bit by bit. And people are saying, and people have been saying, that the Jewish community tried to revive the place, but they weren't allowed. And then it started deteriorating. It wasn't that people came and demolished everything. No, it was just disappearing bit by bit. And when the Vilnius Old Town Restoration Project was prepared, and we feel very proud at being one of the first in the Soviet Union, and Vokiečių Street was depicted with the buildings, and synagogue was then actually pictured as an object to be restored and protected. But unfortunately, it was left to be ruined, and that was done consciously. And if we try to find some decision of the Communist Party, I think you'd fail, because it was done without speaking, without any words, so that this object of the Jewish community would perish. When we started the new plan, new project of the Old Town regeneration, it's an urban plan, there was a lot of enthusiasm from the public. And we tried to find out what the society wanted, what the public wanted, and made the sociological questionnaire, the survey. At the time, the public felt, and the gentry first of all, so the gentry felt that the city needed to be rebuilt as in Bulgak pictures, and he's a photographer, most famous photographer of the 20th century, as Vorobyov wrote in his book. It was he was an interwar art expert, and there was no Soviet time literature about Vilnius. And Vladas Drėma, also the cultural expert, and lived during interwar and post-war at the time, was still alive. And we received the result that the main part of the old part should be restored, rebuilt, all the quarters to the most possible extent. So in the concept, we suggested that the margins of the old town would have new architecture, new buildings, and the very center, which is a part of the Jewish ghetto, was a part of that part to be rebuilt. When the process started, the restoration wasn't very fast, But we can say that a few objects, two buildings on Stiklu Street, one triangular quarter on Disna Street, and another block of buildings were built using private funds. So it wasn't funded by the city or the state. The city only had to provide a possibility to do so. And going further from these relevant times, it's becoming more difficult. But from the concepts, we had the Grand Duke Palace and the Great Synagogue mentioned as objects to be rebuilt. We understood that our dream was unrealistic, and we talked about the Grand Duke's Palace, and it was possible after conservating the foundations to cover them with glass, and once the object emerges, appears, it becomes invaluable. So Vilnius sort of returned to the club of monarchy, states that are monarchies, and so the building has a symbolic value as a political and, of course, educational center, which is of greatest importance. And if the eldest synagogue, now we call the synagogue Didžioji, the great synagogue, and but I say that is the most senior synagogue, which it is sometimes referred to in literature. So if this building is going to be restored in one way or another, it would have a very similar meaning, and one of the most important meanings would be educational, and it could also be a cultural center and something on top of that. For us, it wasn't very important to rebuild a copy of the building, of the former building in its former glory, but what we've seen is very persuasive. Even though the synagogue itself has been measured in 1961, and we have very precise plans about the roof structures. And these measurements are available in one of the Warsaw archives, and Lithuania has copies, but that's not the most important thing. I believe that we should undertake this rebuilding in one way or another. The situation is peculiar. In the year 2000, the Seimas decided on restoration of the main object, main Jewish object. But decision is a one thing, but you need the money. Currently, Vilnius municipality passed a strange decision that there'll be no restoration, that all of it should remain as green spaces. Even worse, due to an existence of politics and policy, we have this very difficult situation with kindergartens in Vilnius, and our current plans of the city is looking at the site of the synagogue as one of the other areas of the city, and we need to remove the kindergarten. So at least one representative of the municipality should say that we'll be moving the kindergarten, but basically that will take care of this place somehow. So that's the first thing. And the second thing would be when it should be done. It doesn't matter if it's in 2022, 2025, or even later, but we need to make the decision that then this is going to be done. So this is my wish to the municipality and the government, because without this very specific decision, our words remain just words.